Hi there, this is Suzanne Wagner, and I'm continuing some ballet touring stories. This is about Tel Aviv and Anchorage, Alaska. One of the best things about being a dancer are those special moments when we get to tour and be in special places with different energies. I have always felt the pulse of energy that comes from certain places and how that same energy can impact us all in various ways. Theaters are each unique and different, and cities are as well. Even states hold a vibration specific to its history and the patterns as it has that it created in life's complex web of emotional expressions. When I was in Ballet West, we did many tours to amazing cities and states. Now I can look back and I can appreciate the complicated processes that were required to do such things, and I am grateful to all the staff and crew that worked to make such things possible. The processes were very different between being in the Berlin Ballet touring and Ballet West. The Berlin Ballet loved to tour in opulence and style. I remember going to Israel to do Cinderella with all the complex and fabulous costumes and dancing at Caesarea, a Roman amphitheater built by King Herod. The backdrop being the ocean waves, the full moon, and the ancient stones was beyond stunning. The Berlin Ballet loved to perform massive productions that required lots of equipment, costumes, sets, and manpower to make the magic happen. At the time, I did not realize how much effort such an event could take, but I do remember the packed and loaded, huge plane trying to take off from the Tel Aviv airport. That was something that made all of us nervous. I did not realize until that moment that the runways in Israel must be very long because hot air does not have the lift of cold air. You need more speed to get lift before the plane will take off on the runway. It seemed like we were going forever, speeding down a runway and not going up. Just as we saw the yellow lines indicating that we were coming to the end of the runway, we finally started to lift off very slowly. Then I see the cement barriers under our feet as our plane seems now high enough to clear them. But they do clear them, thank God. The weight of the loaded ballet cargo plane to Berlin was quite a feat to get off the ground, and I commend those amazing pilots who knew exactly how to manage it all and to get us safely in the air. When landing in Berlin, well, that was another scary moment. While the air is colder and denser in Berlin, it also is much windier, and the runway in Berlin is short by modern standards. This airport was built after World War II by the women, brick by brick, but there is a wall and houses at the end of the runway. Boy, I would not want to own one of those houses. The pilots needed to lower the plane slowly as they circled West and East Berlin 3 or 4 times before touching down. Those pilots knew exactly what he needed to do and to put the wheels carefully and gently down at the very beginning of the runway edge so he could immediately hit the brakes and reverse the engines to slow us down. We ended our landing with our nose almost to the edge of the wall at the other end, but we stopped in time. Then the airport had to get a tow truck to back us up so we could maneuver and turn around to get to the airport to disembark. In Ballet West, we might have done less exotic destination performances, but we did more of them. Again, I am grateful to the staff that must plan such things far in advance so we can all go on an adventure. One such adventure was to Anchorage, Alaska. I remember it being October, and having come from Berlin, Germany, I understood the type of wet cold that was coming our way. I brought my fur coat that I had bought in Berlin to keep warm in that bitterly cold and wet climate. When one lives that far north, fabric will not insulate a person like a real fur coat. We did not have all these modern fabrics that we have now. I know that there are those that wince when I say such a thing, but there is a reason why the Eskimos still wear fur and skin coats and hoods to protect themselves from the weather. And you have to remember that we were in the 1980s and the whole movement to protect animals was not yet in full swing. We arrive in Anchorage, and I was astounded at what a cold, wet, desolate place it seemed. Even in modern times, the city was not so very modern. We were clearly on the fringes of civilization back then, and while the hotel we stayed in was very nice and one of the few tall buildings, when one looked out onto the terrain, we could feel the emptiness and the call of the wild. I would look at those mountains, and it felt as if, even then, few, if any men might have walked on them. The feeling of an untamed land was clearly alive and well. I could imagine the first people to see and experience such a place, much less learn to survive and thrive there. The theater was small, but worked well, and when we had a bit of time off, some of us went on an excursion to Portage Glacier by rental car. It was not far, but it was icy cold, even though it was only October. That type of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you feel as if you have never felt such a cold in your life. Along the way, we were told to stop at the Birdhouse Bar along the Stewart Highway as you went to Portage Glacier. We were told it was built in the early 1903 as a miner's cabin. It had survived the 1965 Good Friday earthquake, but for many reasons after that, it was on about a 10-degree slant. Walking in felt like walking on the floors of the mystery spot outside of Santa Cruz. We would walk in, and there was this very small bar with cut logs as stools, and the floor was clearly at an angle. It made me feel drunk before I even had a drink. The decor inside was of pinned underwear, business cards, and sexy souvenirs that were left as tokens that indicated that you had been there. It was a glance back into the old Wild West days, and this bar had quite a reputation. The bartender was a woman who had the foulest mouth I have ever heard. She was a nonstop dirty joke that would make a longshoreman blush. She was a huge Alaskan woman who you knew by looking at her that she could be the bouncer and take you outside unceremoniously and leave you in the cold. The jukebox played only obscene music lyrics, and the tradition was, if you were a woman, if you took off your underwear, you got free drinks. I'm sure someone in our group offered up a token sacrifice. I wonder who. I am grateful that I got to see the real Birdhouse Bar and feel my face flush from the bartender's jokes. Eventually, we made our way to Portage Glacier, and to say that I have never been that cold is really saying something. After all, I'd lived in Berlin. I thought, if this is October, what is January like around here? I was sure I did not want to know. We could only stay outside long enough for a few pictures, and then we were back in our warm car and headed back to Anchorage. That evening, we had a very nice dinner at the restaurant that we had heard was known for its seafood. I ordered a calamari steak. Oh my God. This piece of very large squid was pounded and tenderized to the point of no return. Then it was cooked to perfection in lemon butter and white wine. It was so tender it melted in my mouth. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. It was so delicious that I ordered a second one, because I knew I would never taste such perfection again in my life. And I was right, darn it. I have yet to taste such a memorable moment, but its memory lingers on my taste buds, and I hope to go to Alaska one more time and relive that special moment.